it starts with these steps that we're going to do all the time. On the worksheet, I kind of picked and choose so you didn't have to do all of the steps for every problem. So that's one of the things we deal with. So the first thing we want to do is we want to read the problem. And we're going to go through an example. Then define the unknowns. And we've been doing this every time we've had word problems. You decide what your X and Y. Now, they're going to introduce a new word called constraints. Constraints are inequalities. Like if we were talking the other day about flour and cornmeal, we couldn't allow those to be negative. So we said X was greater than 0, Y was greater than 0, because they had to be positive. Those two were called constraints. Then we're going to graph the constraints, and what it'll do, it'll create a region, or if you want to think of it, it's some type of a shape. And the vertices, or the corners of those shapes, are very, very important, because when we find our answer, we're going to use these corners. And lastly, we'll have an objective function. Usually when we do this, they talk about maximums or minimums. And then you'll take one of the vertices, you'll put it in the objective function, decide which one should be your answer, and then you check it. All right, I'll give you a couple minutes to write those steps down, and then I'll be back. And then if you want to see how you look up the I have no, it's the one right here, it's right next door. Because I would like to be able to attach any type of a laptop. That one was open there and attach it. But I have to teach on linear programming. I'm not real sure how the battery life is for that. But you may need power to. What's the second one? Constraints. C-O-N-S-T-R-A-I-N-T-S. Constraints. On which one? Here? Yeah. Use objective function to decide our answer. Whether it's minimum or maximum, it depends on how they ask it. Now the example we're going to do, I don't want to do those. You don't need it. All right, so how we do it? Here is a typical problem that you're going to see. And I'll read it through once, and then we'll go back and decide on where our unknowns are. Baking a tray of corn muffins takes 4 cups of milk, 3 cups of wheat flour. A tray of bran muffin takes 2 cups of milk, 3 cups of wheat flour. A baker has 16 cups of milk, 15 cups of wheat flour. He makes $3 profit per tray on corn muffins and $2 profit per tray on bran muffin. How many trays of each type muffin should the baker make to maximize his profit? All right, so let's start. What are we going to decide our unknowns are going to be? What is the question? Now go find where the question is. Can everybody see where the question is?
Yeah.
How many trays of each type? So what type of muffins do we have? All right, so we have corn, two things we want to do. So we're going to start by, we've read it and we've kind of got an idea that we're going to let x equal the trays of corn muffins. And y is going to equal the trays of bran muffins. All right, now if you go back to our steps, we defined our unknowns. Now we need to create the constraints. And in our case, the constraints are our inequalities. First of all, are we going to produce negative trays of corn muffins?
No.
No. So we know that x has to be greater than or equal to 0. And y has to be greater than or equal to 0. If I have those two constraints, basically my graph is just the first quadrant. So when I get ready to do the graph, that's all it's going to be. All right, so I want to look at milk. How much milk do I have total?
16 cups.
16 cups. So I cannot go over 16 cups. How much milk does it take to make our corn muffins?
4.
And how many cups does it take to do the bran muffins?
2.
So do you see how I created this equation? This equation is all about milk. Okay? So we're in good shape. So now we need to do one with wheat flour. How much wheat flour do I have?
15 cups.
So I cannot go over 15. How much wheat flour does it take for corn muffins?
3.
And how much for the bran muffins?
3.
Now, all we've done is basically taken this first sentence and this second sentence and created those, using the information from the third. Now, when we talk about profit, that's going to be our objective function. And I'm just going to put it right up here. How much profit do I make on my corn muffin?
$3.
$3. And how much do I make on the bran muffins?
$2.
All right, so we've got all sorts of information. I need to change to a different window, so I need to write these equations over here, because we're going to use those. Less than or equal to 15, right? Okay. So I'm going to go back and open my, okay? Now, because I need these equations in the y form before I can get started. So, who's going to get one in the y form? Okay, Lydia? Who's going to do the other one? Shelby? Before I can graph, I need to know if I have my window set up in the right place. So I may need to move my line down, my x-axis down. But again, these are skills that you have to use. Thank you. Negative 1x. And you're done. All right. So, if you look at what we've done here, first of all, to get rid of this positive 4x, we added a negative x, so it jumps the inequality symbol. Then to get rid of the 2, we divide each piece by 2. So the top I need is 8. Here the top I need is 5. There's 8. So, I'm going to take the one that Lydia did. Here is 8. Then I'm going to go down 2 and over 1. Here is my line. Which side of that line do I shade? Towards 0, 0?
Yes.